People think Orihime is a useless healer and all that she does is stand around yelling Kurosaki-kun. Because she's so hated, people don't really end up understanding how her powers actually work. This is because Kubo drops breadcrumbs throughout the entire series about just how utterly broken Orihime's abilities are. But if you're not paying attention, then these details are really easy to miss. The Shun Rikka grants Orihime with such incredible power that even Aizen specifically targeted her for it. So fancy Orihime used Soten Kishun to heal Chad's arm or patch up Ichigo after a fight, and their brain immediately files Orihime under the healer category as they move on. Referring to her as a healer does such a disservice to her abilities. Ulquiorra Schiffer literally spelled it out for us in chapter 192. When he witnessed Orihime healing Chad's severed arm, he specifically identified what Orihime was doing as manipulating space and time itself. This is coming from Ulquiorra, who analyzes everything with precision. He tells us directly that what we're seeing isn't healing through biological means, it's something operating on a completely different level of reality. When Hachi analyzed her hairpins, he made a critical observation. Her powers work like his, which means that they are fundamentally based on rejection and barriers, not healing itself. Orihime doesn't heal wounds in the traditional sense. She doesn't accelerate the natural healing processes or stitch tissue back together through supernatural means. What she is doing is far more broken than ordinary Kaido. She rejects the very concept that the wound ever happened in the first place. When Grimmjow's arm was completely incinerated by Tozen, as it was reduced to nothingness, Orihime was able to bring it back. She rejected the phenomenon of its destruction so thoroughly that reality itself had to comply with her power. Now let's talk about why Aizen initially went after Orihime. When he shows Orihime the Hogyoku and essentially reveals his entire plan to her, what is he doing? He's basically studying her as she genuinely interests him. In chapter 240, Aizen elaborates that her ability is to limit, reject, and negate any kind of event that has happened to her target. It's far more powerful than temporal regression or spatial regression. It is a power that trespasses into God's territory. Aizen understood that her ability to reject phenomena meant that she could potentially erase the Hogyoku from existence entirely. We do later learn that Aizen had brought Orihime to Hueco in order to split the forces of the Gote 13, and to ensure that Ichigo would be preoccupied in Hueco while Aizen and his army head to Karakura town. But this doesn't negate the fact that he was fascinated with Orihime's powers. Now let's break down what she can actually do with the Shun Rikka, because this is where the broken aspect really starts to shine. Orihime has 4 forms of rejection. Santan Keshun appears to be an ordinary shield, but it rejects phenomena that exist beyond the barrier. Any attack that touches it is completely rejected, so the event of the attack connecting with what is behind the shield is denied at a fundamental level. Now pay attention to what Orihime blocks over the course of the series. During the Soul Society arc, Orihime is blocking attacks from Mairi Kurotsuchi's exploding course bombs. These were attacks that were designed to kill Shinigami. The 4th Division members who witness this are stunned, noting that her defensive capabilities might even surpass their captain's abilities. During the Arrancar invasion of Karakura town, as Yami is about to attack Orihime, she stops him by using Santen Keshun. In chapter 341, she even uses Santen Keshun to block an attack from Ulquiorra. The most impressive feat that she demonstrated with this ability is during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, where she consistently blocked attacks from the Soul King-absorbed Yhwach. These are attacks that have been absorbed with the power of a being who maintains the balance of the entire cosmology of Bleach. Yhwach could rewrite futures and even kill people in timelines that no longer exist, as he fires off these massive waves of darkness that disintegrate anything that they touch, and Orihime's Santen Keshun just rejects them. This is exponential levels of scaling that puts her defensive capabilities in the same conversation as the absolute top tier characters in Bleach. Then there's Soten Kishun, which is what everyone points to as a healing ability. So we've clarified that this is rejecting the phenomenon of the damage itself, returning her target to a state before the injury occurred. In chapter 179, Yasuchika noted that the technique's healing speed is potentially faster than Isane's and his own. In chapter 382, we do learn that the technique does not replenish Orihime's target's Reiatsu as quickly as regular Kaido does. Now this ability does have its limits, as we see in chapter 349 249, as Orihime was unable to heal Ichigo from Ulquiorra's Cerro Oscuras, which had blown a hole in his chest, and it was unable to restore the Soul King, who was cut in half, in order to return him to a living state. When she tried to restore Ichigo's Bankai after Yhwach had destroyed it with the Almighty, she needed assistance from the Book of the End in order to achieve this. So while Soten Kishun cannot undo damage inflicted by the Almighty, if she works with Tsukushima's Book of the End, which allows him to alter the past of an object so that it wasn't broken, Orihime can then utilize her negation powers to reject the damage. Then there's Koten Zanchun, Orihime's offensive technique, which allows her to target her opponents from a distance. Now admittedly, this is an ability that she rarely uses. We only see it in literally 2 chapters. So she calls out the name of the technique as she says, "I reject," as the attack is initiated. Tsubaki can reject the union of matter itself, as he creates a shield inside whatever he penetrates and then rejects the fusion of matter on both sides, splitting the target. In theory, this means that there's nothing Tsubaki is unable to cut through. The only limitation is Orihime herself, as she has a lack of killing intent. Her gentle nature and her unwillingness to cause harm is her massive limiting factor for this ability. This is why Koten Zanchun is quite easy to counter, and why Tsubaki is prone to injury. The ability Shiten Koshun proves that Orihime isn't just limited to defense. During the Fullbring arc, Orihime utilized Shiten Koshun. It's an offensive and defensive attack, and when Orihime first uses this technique in front of Ichigo, she had passed the stage of needing to verbally summon her abilities. In chapter 449, we see Hinagiku, Bygone, and Lily form Santen Keshun to protect a target from an attack, and then Tsubaki is integrated into the middle of the pyramidal shield in order to combine their abilities. When the shield receives an attack, Tsubaki disperses the resultant force as a concentrated explosion, which is automatically returned back to the attacker. We also see Orihime use this ability in the very first episode of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime during an anime exclusive scene. During the Soul Society arc, Orihime demonstrates an impressive feat that a lot of people forget. The Kototsu appears within the Dangai to sweep through it and eliminate anything that might be taking refuge there. Yoruichi explicitly states that if you get caught by it, you will die. This thing exists to kill anything that it touches, no exceptions. When it appears and catches Uryu, Chad manages to pull him free, but now they're all in immediate danger. The Kototsu is coming and there's nowhere to run, and everyone is about to die. Yoruichi has already said that there's no escape, but Orihime throws up Santen Keshun and blocks the Kototsu. And this is early in her development with the Shun Rikka. She rejected an attack from a conceptual being that exists to maintain the Dangai, and not only does she block it, she does it well enough to protect everyone and give them time to escape. Ichigo himself acknowledges it immediately after. They would have died without her. During this point in the Bleach story, this was Orihime probably at 20% of her eventual power level that we see in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. During the Arrancar arc, Urahara specifically tells Orihime to stay away from the battlefield. It's one of those moments that seems straightforward until you think about what it means. On the surface, yeah, he's protecting her because Tsubaki was broken and she had lost her offensive capability, but in actuality, Urahara was afraid that Aizen would notice Orihime. Urahara knew that Orihime's powers needed to be kept hidden, but unfortunately, Urahara's precautions were already too late, as Ulquiorra had already recorded footage of Orihime healing Chad on his first visit to Karakura town, and he had already shown it to Aizen, who immediately recognized what he was seeing. What's fascinating is that Urahara's fear was completely justified. If Aizen could get Orihime to reject the seal on the Hogyoku to undo Urahara's own work, then the entire plan to stop him would have collapsed. Kubo made sure to include limitations with Orihime's Shun Rikka so that she doesn't become too game-breaking. Her powers are influenced by her emotional state and determination. When she is confident and resolved, she can reject phenomena on a massive scale. When she's doubting herself and she's scared and she's uncertain, the abilities weaken dramatically. We see this clearly during the Ulquiorra fight when her mental state prevents her from healing Ichigo effectively. Or it could be that she's just unable to literally bring somebody back from the dead. Orihime's greatest weakness isn't in relation to her power, it's her psychological state. She's fighting against her own gentle nature every time that she steps onto the battlefield. It's the same empathy and kindness that makes her who she is, which actively works against her utilizing her abilities to their fullest potential. When Jirobo points out that her attacks have no killing intent, he's identifying a key limitation of Koten Zanshun. Tsubaki could theoretically cut through anything, but only if Orihime could bring herself to want to kill her opponent. And again, like I mentioned earlier, when it came to the Soul King situation, we saw a hard limit to her powers. She couldn't reject his death and couldn't restore him after Ichigo cut him down. Yhwach explains that a human's power is unable to revive the Soul King. This suggests that there are cosmological limits to what rejection can accomplish. But even this limit is somewhat ambiguous. Was it truly impossible, or was it because the very fabric of reality was collapsing, so there was nothing stable left to reject back to? As we saw when she tried to restore Ichigo's Tensao Zangetsu, Orihime's powers are not omnipotent, but they are able to work around seemingly impossible situations if given the right conditions. The Almighty should have been an absolute counter to her rejection abilities. You can't reject something that's broken across all timelines, but with Tsukushima's help creating a new past, she bypasses the limitation entirely. The fact that her rejection abilities interact with the Almighty's future manipulation at all, even if they need help to overcome it, it highlights that she's operating at that incredibly high god tier level of power. Something else that also gets overlooked about Orihime's powers is that they were awakened by the Hogyoku not through training or inherited bloodline abilities, but because the Hogyoku, the object that created the Arrancar and transformed Aizen into a transcendent being, had responded to Orihime's desire for power when she had felt helpless and unable to save her friend. Aizen explains this in chapter 401 when she cursed her powerlessness with all her heart. The Hogyoku answered her desire. According to the Can't Fear Unworld light novels, Orihime and Chad are both Fullbringers, humans with powers derived from having their souls touched by Hollow Reiatsu. The novel confirms that their abilities were awakened specifically through exposure to Ichigo's spiritual pressure. Ichigo was leaking massive amounts of uncontrolled spiritual pressure early in the series. Shinji even comments that Ichigo's Reiatsu could be felt across the world. This Reiatsu containing hollow essence from White affected those close to him, particularly Orihime and Chad, who already had latent spiritual awareness. The Hogyoku didn't create their powers from nothing. It awakened and shaped Fullbring abilities that were already dormant within them, manifesting those abilities in response to their deepest desires. For Orihime, someone who desperately wanted to protect her friends but never wanted to hurt anyone, the Hogyoku gave her the ultimate defense and ultimate restoration, because at its core, the Shun Rikka has the power to reject harm itself. The fact that Aizen needed Orihime to potentially restore or alter the Hogyoku, it creates this narrative loop. The object that gave her power might be the only thing that needs her specific power to affect it. Urahara sealed the Hogyoku using forbidden techniques, but Orihime could theoretically reject that seal, or even reject the existence of the Hogyoku. After Aizen's explicit statement about her powers, after watching her block attacks from Ulquiorra and even Yhwach, with Ulquiorra identifying the Shun Rikka as space-time manipulation, and then her feat of blocking the Kototsu, why is it that fans still refer to Orihime as useless? Why does she get relegated to just a simple healer in a lot of discussions? Well, this is because Orihime isn't given flashy destructive feats by Kubo. She's not throwing around Getsuga Tenshos or unleashing a Bankai. Her most impressive moments are inherently defensive or restorative, and to people who are only interested in big explosions and flashy reveals, this isn't going to impress them. And even in discussions of power scaling, people give way too much weight to offensive capability, but Orihime's primary functions don't fall into that category. The original 2004 Bleach anime adaptation also did her zero favors. They downplayed her backstory, removed crucial moments of character development for her, and in some cases outright changed scenes to make her seem more helpless. The manga version of Orihime is proactive. She makes strategic decisions, and she actively chooses her path. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the core 4 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime adapts Ichigo and Orihime facing off against Yhwach. We are guaranteed a lot of anime exclusive scenes, and I hope that we get to see Orihime use her powers even more during those additional moments. Now, we have reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What are your thoughts about Orihime's Shun Rikka? Do you agree with me that it's one of the most broken abilities in Bleach? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention about Orihime and her powers, powers, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.